big debate around this table on Bloomberg TV and on Bloomberg Radio as to whether we have found full employment yet in the United States of America. What's your take, Larry?
Yeah, it's a good point. Look, I'm focusing on the employment to population ratio, which a lot of labor economists, Ed Lazier and others say is the best measure. When you look at that, Jonathan, we went up 0.2% in today's report for January. So, A, that's good. But, B, we're at 61.2%. The peak back in 2006 was over 63%. What that means in terms of our growing population is that there could be as many as 6 million workers who are still out there that may have dropped out of the labor force. You know, we've had labor force increase of 3.5 million. Prior administration lost jobs. But the point is, people see the better job opportunities. They see retraining and reskilling opportunities. They're coming out of the woodwork. And the employment ratio suggests if we keep marching up towards the prior peak, as I believe they will, and today's blowout numbers suggest, you could have as many as 6 million more workers in this country ready to come back to work and join the labor rolls.
So, Larry, this is not necessarily a bad thing. I'm just wondering, just in terms of your assessment, do you think the administration and many other people on Wall Street as well have underestimated the amount of work still left to do to get back to that peak?
The amount of workers, you mean, Jonathan?
Yeah, to get people back to work again, to get to that position where unemployment is low enough to get wages moving in a bigger way.
Well, look, the progression is good. The patterns are good. May I also suggest in yesterday's productivity report, the last 4 quarters productivity output per hour has climbed all the way back to 1.8%. And so your hours worked or employment growth is well over 1%. So you're looking at the potential for 3% GDP, which I think, contradicts a lot of these secular stagnation scenarios that we reject. All I'll say is what President Trump has done, you heard it in the State of the Union, and you heard it in Davos, he's restructured the economy. He's rebuilt it so that we have new incentives for people to work, save, and invest. That's what a market-oriented economy should be doing. Tax rates come down, sweeping deregulation, energy independence, and new trade deals that will open up terrific export markets. I want to make a point on the export side, Jonathan, because I don't want to overlook that. President Xi and Trump spoke by phone last evening. Very constructive conversation. President Trump believes that China can handle the virus. We are helping them with all kinds of experts and so forth. But again, China cutting their tariffs by 50% is a great sign. And finally, on the export story, not only the tariff reductions, but President Xi apparently said may be a little slower to purchase American exports, but it will get done by the end of the year and next year. They're especially interested in medical supplies, pharma stuff, and agriculture. So, the export boom that we are expecting from these strong new trade deals, let's include USMCA in that, that's going to really help the economy and wages as well.
So, Larry, let's unpack some of that because you mentioned some important things. Has China consulted with the United States then? Have they requested some exceptions to that purchase agreement that you've made just a month ago?
Not formally. I mean, they're consulting because the two leaders have talked about it and staff-level discussions. Nothing formal. The point is that obviously they're in a shut-in regarding their industrial plants in a number of cities and so forth. But President Xi apparently reassured President Trump in this phone call that while there might be some delays in the purchase of American exports, the markers of $200 billion over the next couple of years will, in fact, be met.
To be clear, though, Larry, do you think they can meet the targets for this year? Never mind over the 2 years. I'm just wondering this year whether we're setting ourselves up for failure here on the Chinese side, maybe, as well as the U.S. side, because, as you can see, large chunks of that economy is shut down. How on earth are they going to meet those targets anytime soon?
Well, look, we're not setting ourselves up for failure. We're setting ourselves up for a mild delay. Look, I'm not a medical expert, okay? A lot of people think this virus is going to run 5 or 6 months. Some people are saying that the rate of increase, the rate of its spreading, has already slowed down. The World Health Organization apparently disagrees, so I'll stay with the official view that it's not yet slowing down. Having said all that, The issue here is not an economic issue. It's not a trade policy issue. It's obviously a public health issue. We are doing what we can, along with the WHO. We've sent our best CDC experts over there. Secretary Azar is monitoring this thing all day long, every day, 24/7. So that's really a separate issue. There is no failure because the export schedules and the Chinese purchase schedules will continue literally as soon as physically possible.
So, Larry, as you know, a public health issue can, of course, become an economic problem, and I won't expect you to talk to the medical side of things. Neither of us are medical professionals, but I would like to talk to you about the diplomatic side of things between the US and China right now. This is a quote from the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman. She said this week, the US government hasn't provided any substantial assistance to us, but it was the first to evacuate personnel from its consulate in Wuhan, the first to suggest partial withdrawal of its embassy staff, and the first to impose a travel ban on the travellers. Now, on that travel ban, that same Foreign Ministry spokeswoman has followed up today in the last 24 hours. We deplore and oppose those countries who went against WHO's professional recommendations. Is there any tension there whatsoever between the US and China right now, Larry?
No, and I say no emphatically, and I don't know who this spokesperson is. I don't know anything about that. What I want to say is, from day one, when this thing broke, and I was in this room interviewing various media TV outlets, the United States has offered the best healthcare, public healthcare experts we have. And we have the best public health system in the world. And we have been working with the World Health Organization. We offered it several times. I guess China has finally accepted that offer. President Trump has told us privately in the Oval, and I think publicly he has said this, we want to be compassionate. We are engaging with China. U.S. China relations have never been better. Following the conclusion of the Phase 1 trade deal, we were not the first countries, by the way, to issue a travel ban. Russia was ahead of us, and some other countries were ahead of us. I don't know where this spokesperson got what he or she got, but it's not true. And we have taken steps as much as we can do. They had to let us in the country, and I guess now that has been solved with the WHO. This is not about jobs. This is not about trade, companies, whatever. This is about compassion and good public health care. And we have done whatever, we have offered whatever we can offer. So I totally disagree. And that is not, let me emphasize, that was not the thrust of the POTUS-Xi call last night. I got the printouts, the readouts of that call. That was a constructive, cooperative, very friendly call where President Xi was thanking us for our help on the public health care front and assured us that Phase 1 was going to go through. And as I said before, assured us that if there are any delays because of the virus, the Chinese purchases of U.S. exports would be picked up later on.
Larry, her words, not mine. I hear loud and clear, and I can see you're very fired up on this, and quite rightly so.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You know, it's like no good deed goes undone or something. I mean, that's just utterly not true.
I get it. I'm going to ask you a sensitive question, though. Do you trust the data coming from China regarding the coronavirus?
Oh, I don't know. I honestly can't answer that. I've seen a lot of speculation in the paper. It's not my job. It's not my role.
But, Larry, isn't that a problem that you don't know, that you can't emphatically say that you do?
Well, look, I will say this. Secretary Azar, pretty smart fellow, been in this business a long time. He has said, and I believe Secretary Pompeo, but I know that Alex Azar has said this, that China has shown more transparency during this coronavirus crisis than we've seen in similar problems in the past. That's Secretary Azar's statement. That's about as far as I can go.
Let's talk about a State of the Union and next steps. The president talking about one priority is paramount: reversing decades of calamitous trade policies. You and I talked the other week in Davos. I caught up with the Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross as well. We had some great conversations about Europe and next steps. Larry, what are the next steps? What's the timeline to deal with the issue that is Europe, at least from the administration side of things, in the coming months? What are you looking for?
Very good talks yesterday between Ambassador Lighthizer and Phil Hogan, who's the new EU Trade Commissioner. Hogan's a smart guy. He was formerly the Agriculture Commissioner. I met with him after Bob Lighthizer met with him. The bilat we had in Davos with EU President, the new President von der Leyen, was very constructive. She's got a lot of energy, wants to restart the talks and move things along. President Trump said he'd be delighted to do so. I think there's a lot of new urgency into those talks. I'm not going to go into detail. That's Lighthizer domain. I will just say that there have been some new proposals put on the table, which could amount to some very positive developments. I'm not here to do details. I'm not here to do timing. That's up to our trade ambassador.
Larry, I thought you were here for the details.
The talks have been started.
I thought monthly that's what this conversation was about, that you give me the details.
Well, you know, Jonathan, you're an awful good man, and you've been great to me. I can tell you what I can tell you, and then we have to go ... to finish the sentence.
I understand that. Let's talk about one final issue, though, and it's on Europe. Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross said the Section 232 investigation had completed last year, the end of last year, as you know, and that they determined that it was a national security risk, and that was the imports of European autos into the United States. And then he said to me that the president decided that it is a risk, that we've decided as an administration that it is a risk, but we're going to negotiate. Why are we negotiating around national security risks? It's either a national security risk or it's not, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't think it's quite that straightforward. Look, the Trade Principles Group submitted our report to the president, and he has the authority under Section 232 to take whatever actions that he deems necessary. He has not taken any actions thus far, and I think that whole discussion is on hold for the moment while we work through a good faith effort with respect to the possibility of an EU trade deal. And as I said, those talks are heating up. We had good meeting with the new EU president. Their trade guy, Hogan, was here and had good talks with Lighthizer yesterday. So that's really front and center. I think, we'd like to make a good deal with the European Union. I don't want to speculate on anything right now, except there's a new energy to those talks.